Hey, how y'all doing? It's a little bit of a rant video, but also a thing to where I am kind of criticizing the game format of UFC 5. Um, a lot of the issues that other people have aren't necessarily the ones that I have. My biggest issue is that for a lot of people, I would say the undeniable top three of all time for MMA and UFC, in the UFC, a lot of the times are John Jones, Mighty Mouse, and GSP. For some people in no order, people like to switch around due to the steroids, etc. However, you have the best three fighters to ever fight in UFC. Yet, when you talk about the best players, the top players, the they're unusable in meta play, right? And I'm going to explain here exactly why that is the case and why it is a huge problem that I believe needs to be fixed. And it's not a thing to where UFC 5 needs to buff their stats. It's not the case. It is more so an issue to where they need to fix the game itself. Buffing stats, altering different things to make them fit the meta conditions are not going to fix the game. So I'll go one by one, just these three fighters, and I'd say, you know, because at the end of the day, these three fighters are going to show up in anybody's who knows what they're talking about, anyone who knows what they're talking about, their top three, okay, all time, right? However, if they don't, that's when you really have to talk about the fact that that person just doesn't know what they're talking about. But back into this and talking about this, um, the reason why John Jones is a bit difficult to use, starting with our the first individual and the one of the greats that suck at UFC 5. I'd say one of the biggest reasons why he's not good is just because of the boxing, right? Um, this is a game, UFC 5 is a game to where accuracy, switch things like accuracy, footwork, the kick speed doesn't matter. UFC 5 is very, very, very much based in power and boxing. Okay, that's it. The boxing stats of a fighter in AA is really important. One of the most important things out of anything, right? When you talk about meta play. Because at the end of the day, with the John Jones, unless you exploit and literally break the game and do pull mounts against the cage, it is going to be very, very hard to use a John Jones. Okay? As tall as he is, as much range as he has, it is still difficult to keep that range at 84 inches. The only reason why John Jones out of the three is a bit more usable is because of the fact that at light heavyweight the fight slows down a bit, which gives you it slows down a bit and there's a boost in damage, right? To be able to use the body kicks, the elbows, and they'll do more damage. Now, more into that. Boxing rules the game way too much. Way too much. So what you're going to see a lot of the times, unless you are literally a cheeser, unless you clinch spam, right? And exploit, etc., have perfect grappling, you are not going to be able to have an advantage with one of the greatest fighters ever in UFC history. That's an issue. You understand what I'm saying? It's not a thing to where John Jones isn't good. No, John Jones, he's a good fighter. Okay. But as it is in UFC 5 right now, well roundedness is not something that is um, of value. It's not something of value in meta in the top level of play. UFC 5 is a very boxing oriented fighting. So even though John Jones fits the the reach and range part of when you want to talk about meta play, also he has a lot of good moves, etc., good transitions. He still is not and would not be very easy to use against a block breaking Alex Pereira who has basic takedown, Div 20 good takedown defense, right? You would have to be almost about close. You would have to be 2 to 3 times better than your opponent to beat them while they're using Alex Pereira. An individual, and this is my point of view, right? I believe when you have these GOAT picks like GSP, John Jones, and Mighty Mouse, you should naturally be at an advantage. It shouldn't be that you have to be 2 to 3 times better than your opponent to do things that you need to do. Okay, even though he has terrible grappling, right? It's still not enough in this game and not enough of a difference to where it matters. And someone needs to be terribly worried, especially with the power, him having 100 power, etc. You know, so that's one of the bigger things that I often worry about and think about when it comes to um, John Jones. John Jones is a little harder to use on average, even though he's at higher weights. The only reason why he's usable, honestly, is because he's at heavier weights. But the lack of power, the lack of punch speed makes him hard to use without cheesing, right? When I say cheesing, I don't mean clinching 1 or 2 times in a round. No, I mean literally in order for you to be successful with a John Jones, you need to clinch every other second, every other exchange to where you're just exploiting one of the most broken parts in the game. And even though you got to do what you got to do, block breaking is cheese too, it shouldn't have to be that way, in my opinion. You should be able to protect yourself with your reach advantage, your range control, your footwork. But that's not how the game goes. If I am somebody who is a boxer, the fight really does go on my terms. There's no way to slow down a fight as a defensive fighter in this game, which makes it so much easier for someone who just wants to run into something and block break. Now, next fighter, okay, you're gonna see a pattern. It's gonna start to continue. We're gonna talk about GSP. GSP is the same thing, okay. GSP, he has decent kick power, very good footwork, all right kick speed, skirmisher, laser focus. So has decent things going for him. 93 chin, 89 cardio. These are two things that make it close to impossible for him to be used. Even though this is one of the greatest fighters of all time, top 3 on everybody's list, he is close to impossible to use in meta play. Some of that has to do with the fact that grappling is not detailed and complicated enough, or even, I'll even say, um, technical enough for some of these stats here to matter, like takedowns. Okay, somebody had genuinely somebody with good takedown defense. It doesn't matter what you do; they're still gonna stop every takedown. There's no intricacies or anything that a good player can do to use these stats to their advantage to the max, right? So some of the biggest things that GSP that are going against him, his health, okay, when you talk about his chin, his cardio, okay, makes it hard for him to be used, as well as his reach and his height, okay? Even though he has a 76-inch reach, he's getting outdone by Israel Adesanya. He matches with Dricus. And then don't even get me started on Alex Pereira. Outdoes him there. Has no power. Okay punch speed. And then not a lot of anything. So the biggest issue when we move down to welterweight, we see a bit of the same thing. We see once again no power. Okay punch speed. Okay kick power. Skirmisher, marathoner, laser focus. No chin. Better cardio though. But in this, right, the problem is the fact that in order to play this game at a high level, you must you ha- it your opponent can force output out of you at any moment. Okay? There's no distance. The distance management game, it's so easy to cut off the distance that you're constantly going to be throwing, right? So somebody who throws less is really going to be a bit of a unicorn because of the fact that first of all, you're not going to be able to predict every punch. You're going to get hit, and that's just realistic with fighting, right? You're going to get hit in fighting. If you ever done a martial art, you're going to get hit, right? The issue is that I can't use my range control to control that. My opponent overthrowing, they don't get punished for that unless I go to the body a lot of the times, right? You don't get punished for output. So what does that look like in the long run? Them not being punished for output means that all they have to do is land. Even if they throw 100 punches in a round, all they have to do is land. And that's an issue. So John Jones right now, he's useless because he doesn't have enough power, because he can't box as well, because you have to cheese with him, all this. And even when you talk about his grappling, man, it just simply is just well-rounded, and that's it. 92 top control, 88 bottom control, 95 sub offense. He's just well-rounded, and well-rounded does not work in this game. Well-rounded hasn't really worked since UFC 3, UFC 4. Well-rounded was okay, but it still is not good enough. So far we talked about John Jones, who wasn't good enough because of his power, right? We have GSP, health, cardio, reach, right? Reach is 76, is matching, but at the same time, when you talk about that, even when you're matching in your reach, the punch power just matters so much. You have a Usman who has force of nature. You have GSP, you lost. I'm not gonna lie. You have two people of equal skill with GSP and Usman. Something that feels like, ooh, either one could win. It's possible. The footwork of GSP and the anti-grappling. No, that's not how it works in this game. You're going to get in the trades. You're forced to. There's no way to stop it. Last person on this list is Demetrius Johnson, who is genuinely still not a good pick unless you're a heavy grappler and your opponent doesn't know what they're doing. Okay? These stats are all cool if you're a better grappler than your opponent, right? This is one thing that I want to note. This is one thing I want to note about this whole thing. If you're a better grappler than your opponent, it doesn't matter what grappling stats, what grappling moves you have. Okay? But on hindsight, if you are a better striker than your opponent, you still risk losing to an opponent who just straight up has better power, better durability, etc. Right? I feel like the gap for that is a lot different, which makes it hard to work with these legends on the feet, right? Keeping your distance. Really, these three picks and the three things that these legends are good at that are missing from this game are range control, distance control, right? Footwork. There's not enough intricacies in those department angles, stuff like that, right? There's not enough intricacies in those things to make these picks really stand out as wow. You know what I'm saying? This is Demetrius Johnson. Demetrius Johnson talking about the void, okay? John Jones, when you talk about him using his reach, okay? The way he posts, the way he ties up hands, locks horns, whatever you want to say. GSP and his Superman punches, okay? His jab, stuff like that, right? Don't none of that matter when you're talking about meta fighting. An 88 punch power, you can't do nothing with that unless you genuinely, like I said, are cheesing the hell out of your opponent, right? And I don't mean just doing normal grappling. I mean literally cheesing. Can I get a second? You good. So that's really what I have to say about the the problem, the legend problem, as I want to say. Okay, so that's all. I'm going to leave the video at that. If there are any picks that you all think about that are really unusable and hard for you to use, leave them in the comments. Some other honorable mentions. As much as I don't like the Jose Aldo Glaze, I don't think he's the best featherweight of all time, but he should still be very much of a threat, right? He's hard to use in this game. You also have Dustin, who's not as good as he was in UFC 4. He's a bit much slowed down. I think Justin Gaethje could be a bit more threatening. Um, Bilal Muhammad is hard to use. Same problem as the other guys. This game is really about power, durability, and yeah, that's what it is. What's another pick? Sean Strickland. Even though I don't really like Sean Strickland like that, he should be very, very difficult and annoying on the feet when you talk about defensive work. And then when I keep talking, it's about the intricacies, right? The intricacies, that's it. So that's all for my video. Please leave some more examples in the comments. And I'll get back with y'all. Have a great day.